6:17 p.m. on December 16th, 2021. It's a little bit like Groundhog Day because we were just here. So this evening's agenda includes public comment will be first, followed by communications from the school committee and the administration. Then we will have reports and discussion items, including the FY23 budget update and an update from the nurse manager. And then our action items, we have a sole action item of consideration of approval to dispose of surplus technology, the chair report, a superintendent report, future agenda items, next meetings, and an executive session followed by adjournment. Our student representatives will join us again in January as we have many meetings over the course of the next month. So we will begin with public comment tonight, and I will read our usual preamble. Public comment shall be for a period of 20 minutes, and it's not a discussion, a debate, or a dialogue between individuals and the community. It's a citizen's opportunity to express their opinion on issues on the agenda or of school committee business, and any individual who wishes to speak with us, with the committee, shall identify themselves by name and address, and shall speak for no longer than 3 minutes. And all individuals shall speak to the full committee through the chair and shall not address individual members or administrators. We offer both in-person public comment and remote public comment. We do not have any registration for our remote public comment, so we will go straight to the in-person public comment. And let's see. I guess we can go ahead and begin. We have 3 members of the public here for public comments. Yep, yes, please come up to the table. Thank you so much.
And if you could, everyone who does comment, if you could speak right into the mic so that you and Cam can pick it up.
And I just so you know, we do have like a timer running, so if you hear a beep, that's just letting you know that 3 minutes have passed.
So. Okay, I did.
Thank you.
I did send this to everybody through email, so just in case I can't finish or if you can't hear me fully. My name is Deborah Johnson. I live at 14 Wickham Road. I'm a 28-year Winchester resident. Last week, I watched the public comments with the Winchester PTs, OTs, speech therapist, and teacher, and I was so upset hearing how the PT and OTs are not being treated equally with the other staff members. I know they deserve to be in Unit A. I know this because as a parent, I have seen their dedication to the students. I've seen how their excellent experience, skills as OTs and as a PT have impacted my children and others. They have allowed countless students to progress in their fine and gross motor skills, to allow them to focus in class and to interact with their fellow students and teachers so they can succeed in school. They have also assisted other team members, including the teachers and speech therapists and psychologists and others, so these students can reach their goals in other areas. They have as much impact and are just as necessary as all the other staff members that are in Unit A, which includes the teachers, the speech therapists, the psychologists, the nurses, librarians, IT staff, and the social emotional counselors. I've been told that there are 18 comparable local school districts and that 17 of the 18 have the PTs and OTs in Unit A. As a standard in Winchester, it is to include all the special ed staff members in Unit A except for these PTs and OTs, and I cannot understand why we would not follow the standard in our area and the standard in Winchester. Aside from being a parent who has seen the direct impact of OT and PT on the students, I am also a pediatric physical therapist. This is what I've done for a living. As a pediatric PT, I am very concerned for the future of our PT and OT in the Winchester schools. I'm concerned with how Winchester will be able to recruit and retain future experienced therapists when their pay scale does not match their colleagues or the surrounding school districts. The salary maximum, I've been told, for Unit A is $110,000, and for the current PTs and OTs in Unit F, it is $77,000. It is very hard to feel positive and valued when you're working for potentially $33,000 less than your colleagues. Finally, I'd like to express my concern with the hiring of OTAs through an agency. Half the schools, I've been told, are now covered by OTAs. I'm very concerned with the level of care that's given by inexperienced contracting OTAs who are working alone in a school. I'm very concerned with the fact that they are being supervised at the agency level and not by employees. and that those agency OTs are not in the school building. OTAs have 2 years experience, an associate degree. PTs have a doctorate degree. OTs have either a master's or a doctorate degree. So you're asking people with an associate's degree who've had one class in how to treat children. And treating children is extremely different than treating adults. You cannot say, like you will to an adult, can you move your hand this way? Or can you walk down the hallway this way so I can see what's wrong with the way that you're walking or the way that you're holding your pencil? Kids don't listen, and especially kids in this.
Sorry.
Is that my timer?
That is.
Sorry.
Are you almost finished?
I just was finishing this section. Is that, if that's not okay, that's okay. I've sent this all to you. So let me just, why don't I just conclude by just saying that, that I really, honestly, in my deep heart, believe that this is the right thing to do, and that Winchester needs to preserve this high level of OT and PT in their schools, as these 5 therapists have done for over 2 decades on average. Thank you very much. And like I said, I've sent you the whole thing, so if you want to read more about the OTAs, you have it. Thank you very much for your time.
No, we can also attach it to the public record.
Do you want this?
Ms. Bergstrom, we have it in our email, and I send those on to.
No, it'd be good to have a copy just to attach to the minutes.
I do send it. I forward it to our administrative assistant.
Yeah, she's taking care of it.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, my name is Sarah Clabby. I'm at 67 Church Street. And my 4-year-old son, he is autistic and he attends the Parkhurst School. My son receives both occupational and speech therapy, and I'm thrilled to report that he is making enormous strides under supervision of advanced practitioners. As the former CEO of over 40 preschools in New England, I know what it's like to be in your shoes, listening to parent feedback and operating hundreds of classrooms. It is not easy. That said, based on the cautionary tales from my own professional experience, I'd like to share why now is a good time to change your vote and accrete OTs and PTs into Unit A. First, I need to emphasize how this decision affects the entire Winchester education ecosystem, both teachers and children of all abilities. If there is any belief that this only affects special needs children, I have evidence to the contrary. In 2019, I commissioned an independent study to evaluate the overall classroom experience. Across the board, one of the hardest things for teachers is what we call chaos moments. These are moments during which the classroom completely stops to respond to an interruption, many times to redirect a child's behavior. Big or small, when these moments arise, children throughout the classroom cannot focus, curriculum cannot be administered, teachers' energy is zapped, and the day's objectives go out the window. Reducing these chaos moments require extensive experience and advanced functional expertise. Investing in high-quality advanced therapy is not just about outcomes for special needs children. It's about supporting our Winchester teachers so they can do their jobs for all children. Another reason to reconsider your approach is that the public landscape has changed since you first started negotiating. Since the community learned more broadly about this issue last week, there has been a unified call to action for retaining high-quality therapy in our town. The criticism around the current vote is clear, compelling, and consistent. There were many times in my executive position in which parent feedback was isolated, and we were able to contain the backlash. This is not the case right now in Winchester. Across the board, your constituents are calling on you to keep experienced OTs and PTs employed in our school system. This is considered an absolute necessity to upholding the high-quality education program that brings this town such great pride. Regardless of what has happened in past negotiations, changing your vote now means that you've learned new information, you've listened, and you have responded in kind. The Winchester community's position on this is exceedingly clear, and it diverges from what you've decided to date. Please reconsider your vote and make placing PTs and OTs in Unit A a priority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yes. I also have the petition that has been going around town with signatures.
Okay. You can leave it with me, thank you.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much.
Can we get a copy of your statement?
It's in there as
Oh,
well.
okay, thank you.
At this point, the petition has 600 signatures.
Hi there.
Thank you.
My name is Eunice Wackeser, and I live on 7 Ravine Road. I have 2 boys, ages 2 and 4, who have recent diagnosis of autism. My 4-year-old Rowan recently started at Parkhurst, and he has progressed so much with his speech and motor skills. This improvement is because of the hard work that my son and his therapist provide. My husband and I are hardworking professionals who want to provide exceptional education to our kids. We looked at many towns around our area, but Winchester stole our hearts. The small town feel of community was a huge component to why we decided to buy here. I knew our hardworking tax dollars would maintain this beautiful community and provide the education my kids deserve. I recently found out that the school committee is trying to replace our highly educated and skilled OT/PT therapists with assistants. As a healthcare worker, I know what proper education and skilled experience can result in. Can you imagine the punch in the gut feeling that overwhelmed me? Does Winchester only want to provide exceptional educational services to neurotypical kids and discriminate kids who have special needs by not providing the services I know this town can afford? Please stop these pay cuts and give these hardworking therapists and our children what they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Wexler. Do we have any more for public comment? Okay. So I will close public comment at this point. I would like to clarify that there has not been a vote by the school committee.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one. Okay. So we will now move into our communication section of the agenda. I will give it to Mr. Nixon to just announce about the EFPBC meeting on January 10th.
Sorry, I was surprised because my
Yes.
screen said K-12 science update.
Oh,
You're
yes.
putting me on the spot for something else. So every EFPBC meeting, of course, is a public meeting. But on January 10th, we really want to advertise, unlike the meeting we had at the high school in person on the 16th and town hall that morning, which was our community kickoff, we'll be having a remote meeting, webinar style. So I'll have to polish my skills on that and look to Ms. Bergstrom and Ms. Bolognese to help me with that. We're going to be introducing some of those early conceptual options that TAP A is beginning to develop and introduce to the EFPBC. But in particular, we really want to be able to share it with the public and get their feedback, get the questions to begin to come up with some priority options. This meeting is really going to be important because, as we said at the outset, MSBA is now asking us to submit on March 3rd, and so we've lost about a week and a half. We anticipate the EFPBC may very likely be meeting almost on a weekly basis very quickly, and again, everybody's welcome to watch those meetings. Those are also over Zoom. You can see where those are on the town calendar if you want to see how things evolve. We will very soon be announcing our project website, by the way. We have created a Gmail address, which I can also just share with everybody, which is lynch2025faq@gmail.com. We'll have a link to that on the homepage. If anybody has questions about the Lynch project that they'd like to ask, they can send a question to that email address, and our communications team will review it, and we will begin to develop an FAQ page as well. So not tonight, but very shortly, I look forward to be able to share with the committee kind of what that site looks like as a home base for information. So January 10th, and everybody on the school committee, of course, is welcome and encouraged to attend as well.
Mr. Nixon, could you say that Gmail address one more time?
Lynch2025faq@gmail.com.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Nixon, real quick, on the project page of our school committee website, we have information about Lynch as well. On that last button, is there any way that we can, as we develop a list of public meetings like EFPBC or other public meetings, we can keep that up to date so that people know where to go look for them, besides just the government calendar where it's sometimes hard
Yes.
to locate things
and
amid all the other government meetings.
short answer is yes. I think what we will do is link from there to the project
Right,
website like we
exactly.
did on the McCall page. And what you'll see, maybe as early as our next meeting, the homepage for the Lynch project site actually has a specific colored banner that says what's next, like what's coming. And that actually, it advertises the January 10th meeting. And so kind of anything that's coming next that people should be kind of tuned into,
Right.
we're going to push that up there as well, emphasize that.
Thank you.
Mr. Hopcroft?
One, thank you for having it as a remote meeting. What time is the meeting?
We're waiting on the consultant team to figure that out, so it'll be in the evening.
Okay.
Presumably 6 o'clock, which is when our EFPBC meetings always are. I don't think it's going to be earlier. I don't think it's going to be later. We just haven't set that yet. So
Great.
count on 6.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our policy subcommittee has met this week, and the main item that was discussed was a review and an update by our council of the 2021 Bully Prevention and Response Plan. We had some questions about this, and Dr. Hackett will take the items back to our council for review and also for consistency with our district policy manual. And we will aim to bring back we will aim to bring this back to the school committee by the end of January for a first reading. And our finance subcommittee has also met, and I will turn it to Ms. Bergstrom and Mr. Brady in case you have any updates.
So we just had the initial meeting of the Finance Subcommittee this week. I think a lot of the information that we may have gone over in that meeting, we may be hearing again tonight from Dr. Hackett. And we also established a regular series of meetings, likely weekly as we move out of December and into January, to keep up with the budget and the issues around it. We also discussed the signing of warrants at that meeting. And the recommendation, I believe, if you agree, Seamus, with what we established was that we, as Finance Subcommittee, would be reviewing those warrants and signing them. But then we would also like to bring them back to the school committee, make them available in the business office from 8 to 4, Monday through Friday, if you would like to review those warrants, because we'll need a quorum of the school committee to sign them. So you are welcome to view those at any time in the business office.
Can I offer a thought?
Mr. Nixon?
So Mass General Law requires the school committee to sign off on the warrants, and it gives us the opportunity, if we choose, to authorize the chair to sign on our behalf, which we did, as some of you know, during our initial shutdown. It was presumed that that authorization continued even after the reorganization. So I just want to be clear, what you're suggesting is sort of as an extra effort here for the subcommittee, you want to take some time to go through the warrants. But
Yep.
I do think we should have a discussion as a committee about whether we're saying it's time to go back to getting all those signatures.
I think that's what I'm saying. We're
Okay.
recommending that we're going back to at least having a quorum of the subcommittee.
Yeah, we wanted to recommend a quorum of the full committee
Of the full committee.
Of the full
versus
committee.
all 5. We didn't want it to be if someone was unable to get there, because again, any action we can take with 3 people anyways.
Right.
So there's no added benefit to requiring all 5 of us to sign, but
So I would defer to Mr. Rowe on this. I assume that a quorum of the committee is all that's legally required to sign off on warrants, since you represent
He's the one that made the recommendation.
the public body.
Yeah.
But my point is, when we made that authorization for the chair to sign, we never put a sunset on that. And I
Right.
think it would be actually appropriate for us to get that on like an agenda. I mean, I agree with you completely. I think
Yeah.
it's good practice for the whole school committee to have access to the warrants, and we should be signing off on them. But we should formalize that somehow.
You would like a vote, Mr.
As it
Nixon?
stands right now, we've authorized the chair to
Yes.
sign, is my point.
Okay.
And as I have been doing. So, okay.
But I'm with you.
Can these be viewed electronically by the members of the committee, or do we have to?
I'm sorry, Tom.
Can these be viewed electronically by the committee? Can they be shared with us electronically, or do we need to go?
Heretofore, we have always seen them as hard copies, actually, at our meetings. Until that was pre-COVID. And then post-COVID, or during COVID, as Mr. Nixon was saying, we had designated the chair to just sign on the committee's behalf. So, but it has always been a hard copy.
So the answer is we come in and read it in person.
Come in and read it, right, and they're available in the business office from 8 to 4, and I'm sure we can work if you're not able, if people need to be able to get outside of regular business hours, we can work something out.
I might also offer, it affords an opportunity to find one's zen in school spending when you sit down with all these papers and literally just focus on it and read it. Inevitably, you'll have questions. Peter and others will have answers, but it's a good, in my experience, it's a good thing to actually sit down and review them.
We have a room with a candle and some soft music too, just for the
It's a
mood.
fake flame, and maybe some though, 'cause that cookies. would be
Yeah,
unsafe.
right,
A
it's
balance
fake flame.
board.
Can't do that. Right.
And Mr. Rowe is very willing to sit and talk about warrants and Warrants 101. So, and an excellent resource.
I would also add on that it is good to be able to read the hard copy and while somebody from the district staff is present, because if you have a
Yes.
question about an item, it would be challenging, I think, to indicate which part of the warrant and where you're looking for the question. So better to have someone there and ask about a particular line item.
That's fine, I'll come in.
Just my 2 cents.
I usually print stuff out and jot it down my questions, but I can come in and do it.
Yeah.
To Mr. Nixon's point, could I make a motion that we have a thought on how we want to do this? And
I will add it to a future agenda item for our next meeting, but I guess I hesitate to, since we don't have it as an action item and this is really just under our communications, I would suggest that we put it onto January, into the January 11th meeting.
I think that's fair. I think it's clear what we think about it too.
Yeah.
It's all good.
And it doesn't stop anybody from going in
I was
and
gonna
viewing
say, I
the warrants
mean, you're-
now
you're
or
earlier-
signing them.
right.
It just means that currently we only require the chair for the warrants to be paid out. So if anyone between now and January 10th would like to come in and view the warrants, it's not holding us back either, I guess.
But I will definitely add that. So, okay, and then let's see. Tonight, now we have come to our science curriculum snapshot, and our educators, coordinated by Miss Catherine Dwyer and Miss Ann Ritchie, have put together a video for us on updates to the science curriculum in response to updated science standards from the state. And we hope you enjoy the video.
Don't look at me. Okay, I can feel you looking at me.
I'm looking intently
the
at my
Down,
papers.
Look down and make notes. Oh, hold on
I was
just a
going to
second.
say I can fill in. This is the video that came out of the curriculum subcommittee meeting that we had a few weeks ago with these two educators, and we had asked them to create some information to share with the whole committee because they were doing some really interesting work around the new standards with our students.
Stick with me. Don't give up.
you have to hit the big one in the middle.
Yeah, but you know, it's not doing it,
It's not doing it.
Clickable.
and I'm not sure why.
Dr. Lam, is Ms.
Yes.
Ritchie new to the district?
Hi,
Oh,
my name is Ann Ritchie, and
oh,
I'm
say
the
thing.
Director of Science 6 through 12, and I'm super excited to be here today to let you know what's going on in our science classrooms. And I'm Catherine Dwyer. I am the Elementary STEM Coordinator. I'd like to start by talking about some things that we have in common. And with the advent of the next generation science standards, we really have more in common than not. For example, all students 6 through 12 engage in one of the 8 science and engineering practices every day in our classrooms. It really all starts with finding something interesting that's happening in the world and asking a question about it. That's really the start of all science, from kindergarten through adulthood. And so this is just an example, actually from during last year, during when we had closures, where I gave students an assignment where I asked them to just really simple, go outside in the middle of the winter, find a twig, bring it in, put it in water, what happens? Well, what the student found out was that something very different happened than what was expected. And usually that's the best way to start anything in science. Find something interesting, ask a question. By asking that question and starting to investigate, sometimes we find unexpected things happen, and that's what we want to investigate. Next slide.
God, I thought she was talking to me.
It's okay.
So did Anne.
I'm so nervous.
It's not working for me. Oh.
This is not me.
It went to the okay. They get to problem solve in real time. There we go. There we go. Perfect. So we call this approach inquiry. We do the same thing in school. And this is a very common sort of format in elementary school where we ask students, we ask them a big question, and then we say, you know, what do you notice? What do you wonder? About something that's in the real world. So in this case, I was launching with a teacher an investigation of life cycles. So for third grade, rather than starting with what's the life cycle of a butterfly, we're going to teach you about it. What we do is ask a very, very general question that we know we can bring back to the big issue. So for example, at this time of year, I decided to ask, what is a seed? So children think that they know the answer to that. And then you go out in the world and you look for things that are seeds or maybe seeds, and they find that it's a little bit more complicated than they thought. Are these things seeds? Are they flowers? What are these things? And what do they do? What is their point in life? And that's what launches you into, what's the relationship between these things, between a seed and a flower? What is going to happen next? What kind of predictions can we make? How can we observe that? How can we bring some of this into our classroom and watch what happens next? Next slide. The most important thing is that students are learning by doing. So when we talk about the scientific practices, that's really what it's all about. And I put a quote on this slide from a fifth grade student, a different fifth grade student than these ones, who said, I really like that you let us do it ourselves and you don't just show us. And I think that's the important thing. We could choose to start with a video or a book or vocabulary preview, but really what's important in science is starting with the student's own experience. So in this case, they're learning about electrical conductivity in fifth grade as a property of some materials. So rather than assume that they know, which actually they probably don't because they might have missed it last year in fourth grade, how to build a basic circuit, what we do is we just give them the materials. We don't instruct them. We give them the materials that we know can build a circuit. We put them together with a partner and we say, all right, so how are you going to know whether it conducts electricity? Well, you'll have to start by making something that you know does and testing it. So we give them the battery, a couple of wires, and a light bulb. All right, they figure it out themselves. They figure out how to create a circuit that works. They figure out things about circuits by doing that. And then they figure out how they can design a test for things to see whether they actually conduct electricity by placing them inside their circuit. Next slide. So another thing that we all have in common, K through 12, is the integration of technology and engineering standards with the science standards and practices. And this is a great example, a little case study of how that is done in grade 6. Students at the end of their chemical reactions unit had an opportunity to apply what they learned and show what they knew through a performance-based assessment, really trying to design a solution to a problem, an authentic problem out in the real world. So fun fact, turtle sex, the hatchling sex of the turtle is determined by the temperature of the sand that is incubated in. And researchers have discovered that with global warming, the ratio of females to males is going up over time. And in fact, some clutches are turning out to be all female. So the students were exposed to this issue and asked to design a solution. So the first thing that they did, as all engineers do, is they came up with a set of criteria and constraints. So what if they wanted to do is to be able to build portable turtle incubators that were simple, safe to use, portable, safe for turtles and humans, and were able to maintain a temperature of 29 degrees Celsius using a chemical reaction as a heating element. And their task was to figure out how to put the materials together for the kit so that the volunteers who lived in the places where these endangered turtles were nesting could take these incubators, put them together, and help with this problem. So this is a grade 6 student, a great example of integrating technology and engineering and science in the classroom. They're using Google Sheets to look at the ratio of calcium chloride and water to find the optimal 29 degrees Celsius. This is a heat generating reaction. And you can see that there's a lot of experimentation, as Catherine was saying. We don't give them the answers, we give them the materials, we give them the space, because we believe that they can solve real problems. So this is an example of one of the turtle incubators. You can see they've also brought in some of their knowledge from their unit on properties of materials, who is an insulator, what is an insulator, what is a conductor. They also looked at the social responsibility that surrounds all science. Is it their responsibility to consider the environmental impact of their products, or if anyone were to use their products for a bad purpose? So really putting the issues of science right directly into the community. We have the very same approach in elementary. So in elementary school, engineering looks like finding problems that are interesting to children and that children can come up with solutions for. So kid-friendly problems and kid-friendly solutions. So here's an example of students at VO studying erosion and weathering. And the first step for them, these are second grade students, was to go out in the schoolyard with their teacher and identify places where erosion might be having a negative impact on the landscape around them. And they're also here, they're in a drainage ditch. They're looking for solutions that other engineers have come up with. So the problem solving starts in their own neighborhood, in their own schoolyard, in their own home. Identifying those kinds of issues that they can then come up with a solution to. And then after this, they would build a model. So they go take this back into the classroom, they design and build a model to prevent erosion given the circumstances that they've identified outside. Next slide. And this is also how we apply the same process to, as Anne was talking about, our performance-based assessments. So our PBAs are really all about that. They're really all about applying what you know and what you've learned in order to solve a problem, design something, apply something in a way that helps other people, helps the environment, that has some kind of real world application. So here's an example from a 4th grade unit where students learn about the transfer and transformation of energy into various forms. And this is what they did for their PBA 1 group. They decided they wanted to design a model hovercraft. And so they're taking solar energy, they actually transfer it and transform it into electrical and then into wind energy in order to try to levitate something. Can you go to the next slide? Here's another example from the same unit where a student is taking solar energy. You can see that solar panel in her left hand, and then transferring that into and transforming it into electrical, which is stored in that little capacitor. That little blue thing in her right hand is a capacitor, which she's experimenting with trying to use in order to get a cell phone charger to work. So she's basically trying to think about how to use energy in an appropriate way and in an environmentally responsible way in order to do the kinds of things that kids are interested in doing, such as charging a small device. Next slide. And one thing that's really important in this whole process is that application is really about trying to do something useful or make a change in the world. And so here's another example from a different class of, I believe, 4th grade students. It could be 3rd grade students who actually, they had a great lesson presented to them by one of the WHS students, a high school student who's working on STEM lessons for kids. There's a club up there that does this, which they do amazing work. And the lesson was about changes to our ocean because of climate change. So ocean acidification, how that impacts the ocean overall. And the solution was a very kid-friendly solution that the student suggested, which was take something that's going to end up in one of the great garbage patches in the ocean and make it into something useful. So we literally went through the recycling bins and took out recycled materials and made them into something interesting, fun, useful. It could be a toy. In this case, she was making a bird feeder out of recycled bottles. Next slide. What was interesting in that process was that the activity was make recycled art, which is a very kid-friendly activity. But other kids decided, well, why don't we do something different? So kids put out all their ideas. Some kids said something like this: let's make a club. And if you go to the next slide, there's another example. Some kids said this. They said, well, we need to really let other kids in our school know what we've just learned. So we need a sign campaign. We need to say how this is impacting our lives. We need to let other people know. And this is a really important element of our PBA work, is that we're trying to give, we say voice and choice. We're trying to give kids voice to their ideas, which are important. And we also want to give them choice in terms of the way that they're applying what they're learning in school so that it's more meaningful to them. Because if it's more meaningful to them, they will learn more from it. Next slide.
So here's another example of performance-based assessment. This is physics class, so it's juniors. You can see the teacher is recording the students. They're going to be testing based on calculations that they've already previously performed, whether they can get a ball bearing to roll down that yellow ruler and hit the target. Let's watch. Pretty good. So that was a bullseye. There we go. So authentic problems like trying to be accurate with projectiles and expressing oneself, again, as Catherine was saying, with voice and choice. This is an example of grade 7 performance-based assessment where students were asked to create a book about renewable energy sources, and here you can see that this student really was able to express themselves through their drawings. And here's the same project, same PBA, and you can see that they're very different one from another because there is that choice and ability to express themselves. And here finally in grade 8, we have an example of what we're going to see in all our classrooms K through 12 is collaboration. Here are some students building rockets as a performance-based assessment at the end of their chemical reactions unit. And this is my last one, which is grade 10 chemistry. Again, a performance-based assessment where students are using an authentic poster session template that is used by scientists at conferences to communicate the results of their scientific findings.
The other thing that's really important to us about science throughout the grade levels is that science is for everybody. So science isn't just for the kids who maybe end up in AP, whatever it is they do, AP physics. It's for everyone, and it should be accessible to everyone. And in fact, in some ways, I think that science can be an awesome entry point for kids who maybe struggle in other aspects of school or don't like certain things about school, which I'm afraid to say is a lot of kids. So we find that if there's kids who struggle or don't prefer some things about school, oftentimes science is really what they do like. And that's why it's really important that it remains a core part of our curriculum. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard teachers have said to me, that's more than this child has produced all year long. And that was said to me about the photograph that's on the right here, where the student is going out and doing a journal page for science. That was more than that child had written. So in writing, they may not enjoy that too much. But when it comes to exploring the world and then having something to say about it, that's a real access point for kids. And I think that's always important for us to remember. You can go to the next slide. I forgot to read the quote about the genius. A second grade teacher also said that, I can't remember exactly. It's okay, we don't have to go back. But the second grader basically said, I'm a genius and I'm never a genius. And I think that says a lot about how kids feel about themselves when they're doing this kind of work. And that's important. And this last thing I wanted to share with you is a video, a short video. And this was in response to an assignment that was on the choice boards last winter for elementary students. And it was a response where they were supposed to draw a map. So they're supposed to draw a map based on this story, which is a folktale, Follow the Drinking Gourd. The story is about how people used constellations in order to guide themselves, but also landforms and codes. Codes in terms of symbols that are drawn into trees, codes in terms of animal sounds that people would use to signal, or a light in a window that showed this is a safe space. So these are people who are escaping enslavement in order to, and navigating northwards. And it really integrates a lot of the standards that we start teaching from grade 1 on about coding, about constellations, about mapping and landforms. So it was a nice little assignment. A lot of kids enjoyed doing it. And I'm going to show you the video because I have to give you a little personal note too. I got this video during sort of the deepest, darkest winter, which is when the assignment went out. And it was a difficult time for all of us. We were struggling with COVID. We were struggling with keeping students engaged and interested in what they were doing, including students who weren't coming into school at all, but may have been at home, or the kids who were both, part-time at home, part-time at school. Personally, it was a difficult time for me because my parents both have Alzheimer's disease. My father actually passed away from the illness. And so I was having a hard time myself. And then in my inbox comes this video last winter. And I have to say, it gave me a lot of perspective on what we do. It gave me perspective on my own problems, which are actually perhaps not as great as the problems that other people have faced in history. And it also gave me perspective on what we can do, what children can do, and what we can do if we just have a friend by our side. So I'm gonna let you listen to Serena explain it to us. Second grade student.
It's me, Serena, and I am in second grade. I did the choice board, and here's my map. I got a little confused, and I accidentally made it a little small, but here is the start, and you have a friend, and right here it says swim, so you're going to swim right here, and there's another friend to help you. Here's the tree, the broken trees with the mark on it, and here's a friend, and the friend will tell you can get up. So I think this one or this one, and one of them says you can get up. So you stop swimming and you get up. I think right here maybe. And you start walking and you see this friend, and then you see the mountain. So you have friends along the way. And I think this is the river, the other river. And here's the big meetup. Then here's a friend to help you, and then just go right here. Let me draw that. So if you go right
Future teacher
there,
right here.
you see, I wrote right here, freedom. And that, oh, that's one more thing. Here is the drinking gourd and the North Star. Hello. Hello. It's me, Serena.
Technology. I know. Technology.
And
I think we need Serena here to help us.
I'm shifting. I'm not going to advance. I'm going to say thank you to our teachers, above all, who amaze us and inspire us every day. We hope that we've given you a little peek into what goes on every day in our classrooms. And this is the end of our presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. Bye-bye.
Wow. Thank you to Ms. Ritchie and to Ms. Dwyer. This is part of our communications, so not really a section for comment. But if anybody has any questions for Ms. Ritchie or for Ms. Dwyer, you could direct them to Dr. Elenema to send to her.
There was just one thing, Dr. Elenema, before we started. I don't know that the committee, some of us have met Mrs. Dwyer, but I believe Ms. Ritchie is new, and I was just going to ask you to introduce. We didn't really introduce the educators to the committee, so if you could just do that before we move on.
Right, because if they were here, like the old days, right? Yes, so Ann Ritchie is our, she's, poor thing, started right in the midst of COVID. So she is our new 6 through 12 science director, and I just have to say, the teachers have done an amazing job. These two really lead that mission around science being real world and hands-on for our students, and it's very different than the way we used to do science, and it's really unbelievable exactly what they said, what our kids can do if we just let them. So
I'd love to do some of those experiments.
I know. I'm like, I would have liked science like that.
I know. It looks so exciting.
And is Ms. Ritchie also then, so she's teaching at Winchester High School on top of the director
So
role?
like all the directors, so she teaches .4 2 classes, and then is a director at .6.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So next we'll move into our reports and discussion items. And we have Miss Jen Markham out in the hallway who has been patiently waiting. And so I would just ask the committee if you would consider moving Miss Markham up in front of the FY23 budget update. Show of hands.
Yep.
Thank you. Miss Markham, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure to give an update on our district COVID strategies and testing, and I'm particularly excited to share some data on our testing program. So first, I just wanted to start with the mitigation strategies. I don't know if the slides are up.
Yes.
Okay, great, perfect. Thank you. So just to review, and most of us are very much familiar with these strategies because this is year 2. But we do have our Winchester Public Schools symptom checker. Of course, we encourage students and staff to stay home when they're ill, and that's to minimize any potential spread into our buildings. And in terms of what the school nurses do to follow up with kids that are out, there's extensive follow-up on absenteeism, and talking to parents about clearance returning to schools. And many of you are parents here, so you've probably actually received a phone call from one of our nurses or a response to like the Google absence form. So you're probably pretty familiar with that. We continue to mask and enforce physical distancing as feasible. We are continuing our thorough contact tracing. So when we hear of a positive case and this person is determined to be infectious while in school, we start our very thorough contact tracing. So that's interviewing teachers, looking at seating charts, sometimes talking to kiddos about who they had lunch with, things like that. And then our health department's also talking to the positive case outside of school to figure out, what exposures, what people may have been exposed to this person outside of school. Our very important mitigation strategy is our ongoing strong collaboration with our health department. Most days I am on the phone with the health department, so if questions come up, they help us, sort things out if it gets confusing or we just need some guidance. And, vice versa, they reach out to us too to kind of figure out, does this child attend the public school system? Is this child in private school? So there's a lot of collaboration, two-way communication daily. We also are offering testing opportunities, which I will get into detail, but particularly I know you're all familiar with our Test and Stay program, our safety checks. And when we started to see a little bit of a bump, an uptick in the cases, we do sometimes step up our surveillance testing if we do feel there's a need. So that's that we do. We've done that a couple times since probably mid-November, probably October. And then one thing I didn't add, but as I was going through this, I really feel like our communication just between home and school, between, if we find out there's a positive case, just that constant communication with families, the letters that go out. Probably people have gotten letters in this room. Your child's been exposed. Here are your options. Just kind of educating families. And I really think that's working really well, just that ongoing communication. And also, every day in our office, we get phone calls from parents just asking for guidance. So, that's just something I didn't add, but I feel like that's a huge strategy, and it's working. So this next slide is our district dashboard, which you're probably all familiar with as well. This report, this is really a snapshot of current cases in the Winchester public school system, and it's important to note that we do keep track of cases among students and staff. So this reflects current cases. This was updated yesterday. So as you can see, we have currently, this is yesterday, we have new cases today, but we currently have 19 active cases with a total since September 1st of 142 cases. So it's interesting, sometimes people are on there, we're not updating, people come off and we'll be adding, so sometimes that number stays the same, but this is updated at least twice a week. So this is another communication piece so parents can, stay informed. So this is pretty exciting data that I'm happy to share. This is data regarding our safety checks, the weekly safety checks in our schools. So we have been doing the safety checks. We started in the elementary school because those were unvaxxed kids for the most part. So we've been doing those since the beginning of September, or probably mid-September, September 15 is probably when we were able to roll it out. And the numbers are pretty impressive. You can see that the number of students that submit weekly tests, and this was data from last week. You can see percentage of children that participate. And we've seen these numbers before where we're, hitting that 50% to 60% in the elementary schools. McCall High School definitely lag behind. We are rolling out to a take-home nasal swab for McCall, so we're thinking that might bump up the participation. It's probably an easier test to, administer at home. So we use Veritas for the Salivicus, and they recently developed a test that's a home nasal swab. So that's why we're able to offer that coming up. We did just start the weekly safety checks with the high schools. We're on week 3. So the first week we had very low participation. We had a lot of help from, Paula Konis. She's been plugging our program, making announcements, reminding kids to submit their tests. So I think that's helpful. Numbers are still low. We saw low numbers last year too at the high school. So, these are for the most part vaccinated kiddos. And then for 2 weeks we've been offering the safety checks for the staff members. So that's going, the staff seem pretty happy with that. I do not have data on that, on participation, but I'm getting good feedback, so that's good. But the number that's very impressive, and I did share it yesterday in the letter, we've actually processed 8,206 tests through our safety checks. So that's I thought that was a pretty high number, so we're pretty proud of that. This is data on our test and stay program. And again, after we contact trace and we determine the students that qualify for test and stay, and again, it's students that are 0 to 3 feet from a positive person. They must be, of course, asymptomatic. We don't want people in school that are symptomatic. Unvaccinated. They qualify for the state-funded program. So we've had some very busy weeks. We've had weeks when we're testing at every single school. And so I'm pretty proud of the school nurses, the administrative assistants. It's really all hands on deck. So it's very successful because a lot of people are partaking and helping. And of course we have our CRC testers and our district COVID testing coordinator, Stephanie Blass. So right now we have about 6 to 8 testers that we feel are just pretty, we've trained them, they're excited, they're really part of our team. So they're deployed at the schools as needed for test and stay. So it can be pretty busy. I know Lori Kirby has witnessed a couple pretty busy days with test and stay. But again, these numbers are great. So through this program, we've saved 1,267 school days. So again, I mean, that's just, it's great data. So it's worth it. So we recently were able to look at some data for children that were previously not vaccinated. So this is our 5 to 11-year-old age group, and because they became eligible to get the Pfizer vaccine, we've been really excited to kind of look at our numbers. So as of 2 nights ago, this is the data I was able to collect. So it's pretty good. It's about an average of 56% that are vaccinated. These are kids that have 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. So these are pretty good numbers if you consider that these kids have only been eligible for, a month or so.
Can I ask a quick clarification on this one, Jen? So are these kids who actually got the second dose 2 weeks or more ago, or they simply have gotten the second dose by the 14th?
This is just, right, it's not...
In other words, I'm thinking about
they're not
that
fully
definition
vaxxed.
of fully vaccinated.
Correct. You're
Okay,
correct.
so it's the shot.
They've had 2 doses. I was not able to kind of get as far as that, but I will tell you that when we come back from break, those kids are fully vaccinated.
Sure.
So I thought, you know what, let's just go with these great numbers. So
Yeah.
we know in 2 weeks, and some of them already are. One of our school nurses was actually already kind of able to figure out how many kids are vaccinated in her school. But we know when we get back from break, these kids will be fully vaccinated.
And are you getting, if I could ask one more clarification, to get this information, so I'm asking as the parent of an 11-year-old who as of tomorrow at 4 o'clock will be fully vaccinated.
Great.
So are you getting good access to that kind of information through Jen Murphy's department? Where do you get this information? Are you asking parents to provide? I mean, I happen to send some information to McCall.
Right. I mean, a lot of parents are submitting it when we're doing contact tracing, and if we do not have a vaccine on this child, some parent will offer test and say, and they'll say, but my child's fully vaccinated. Then they'll send us the vaccine, and then we'll put it in our SNAP program. We can also access this through the MIIS.
Okay.
So, but I helped out at the clinic on Saturday. So when I was pulling these numbers, I was actually surprised to see that the data was already in.
Sure.
So I think that was the 11th, and the data was already in. So this is pretty up to date. Yeah. I was excited to look at the 6th graders because McCall's been pretty busy, but I was happy to see that 63% of our 6th graders now have 2 doses. So, a lot of those kids are still 11, some are 12, but that was pretty good. And then the other grade levels are actually kind of holding steady. For some reason, that 8th grade class has been at the top since the beginning, and Mr. Mahoney does not like to hear that, but I kind of tease them. But they're always, they were 90%, now they're 91%.
Not everything's a competition.
I'm just
I continue to remind Mr. Mahoney that as well.
Like, guess what? That 8th grade, he's like, oh. But I almost didn't run the high school data because I do it so often. But I'm like, oh, what the heck? And there wasn't really that much of a bump up, to be honest. We've been kind of holding steady. But these are very, very, very good vaccine rates. I mean, this is like tremendous, right?
Yeah, they're extremely good. There's a lot of conversation, though, Ms. Markham, that these don't match what you see on sort of the public health website, that they're even higher. If you look at the age groups on the public health, these are actually our kids, though, that we're talking about, not town-wide,
right.
These are the kids who are actually in
I know
our building. Is that the discrepancy?
I think so, and I also think that the data that the health department's getting from the younger ones are fully vaccinated versus the 2 doses. I'm getting the data just the 2 doses.
Okay.
Because we talked about that. Jess from 9 talked about that. And then her 15 to 19, that's always been higher than the data I can get. But I really think that a lot of those kids they're not in our school system anymore.
Right.
But this is the data that we have. We are probably missing some kids, to be honest, but if we contact trace and we think the child's not vaccinated, we offer them test and stay, the parents will very often, will tell us, no, they're actually vaccinated, and so it's not foolproof, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have most of the kids. So we're doing well with that. But there's still opportunity for, vaccinating if parents are still interested. our town clinics through the health department went really well, so that was good. So I decided to talk about home tests because this is kind of the thing that's coming up right now. In fact, I borrowed this slide from Jen Murphy. She presented this at her health department meeting. And of course, we are in alignment with what our health department is, advising us in terms of home tests. So they're definitely they're a useful tool for someone at home that's experiencing symptoms. A confirmatory test is strongly recommended because these would be an observed test. So if you're at your doctor's office, if you're, you're at a testing site, you go to town hall, so they're observed tests versus the home test. But these are, but they're quick, they're easy to administer, they're relatively inexpensive, and you do get your results quickly. And I've used them. I have a 17-year-old, so I've actually used these myself, and they're quick. But there are some limitations to them. So really timing is important with these home antigen tests. You have to be pretty newly symptomatic. And the big thing for us on the school side is they're not official test results. So without official test results, the health department and the schools, we really can't act on these. We cannot initiate contact tracing or enforce quarantine and isolation because they're not official test results. So we do encourage when parents, again, it's a great way to start. There's definitely a good use for them, but for our purposes in terms of contact tracing, they're not helpful to us. They're helpful in the sense that, your child's symptomatic, you keep them home from school, you don't bring them to school. That's great for the spread. But for next steps, we really are pushing for the lab tests, so we have official test results. And then there's other personal reasons to get an official test result, because any future positive results will require you to isolate again because you don't have that documented test result. So, the 90 days exemption doesn't really exist if we don't have a test. So that's kind of our piece on home tests. This is a slide just kind of promoting the town clinics when we did not have the staff testing up and running. This was a tremendous resource for our faculty and staff. And also if we had kids that we were sending home sick and we knew we had an upcoming town clinic, we were able to refer them that day or the next day. So I have to say that I'm very grateful that the town has been offering these. They've been great, and the results come back very, very quickly, which is super helpful for the school nurses and for the families, of course. So they're going to have a clinic on Monday, and we've already kind of sent that out to our faculty and staff. And then I thought it was a good time to just review the travel policy. We encourage testing after traveling and family gatherings. Of course, if anyone is symptomatic after traveling or being with others, they must obtain a PCR before returning to school. And again, that's just, we don't want to bring the virus into our buildings. We really want to keep it out as much as possible, of course. And then also just a reminder that people should follow state and international travel guidelines. And then finally, I just wanted to say that our high school volunteers were tremendous at both vaccine clinics. So they were wonderful because, I just think it made all the kids that were there to get their vaccines that, distracted them. And I think, just having the older kids there and supporting them. And so I thought it was great that the older kids were there. So I wanted to thank our high school students for helping. And that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Mr. Nixon.
So thank you, Jen, for being here and for this. Because of, what was that, last week, a week and a half ago, FDA and CDC approved boosters for 16 and 17-year-olds, given that it is the holidays. So Middlebury College shut down, Cornell shut down. More and more are coming, and we're seeing a lot of explosion there. From what I just saw yesterday, Cornell's now acknowledging that they're just saying a significant number of those 900 some odd positive cases are Omicron. I can't help but think that it is becoming, as you went through some of your slides, you give a percentage, first dose, second dose. I'm almost imagining a third column. I'm imagining a column for those, how many have had a first dose? It's a big number. Second dose, maybe a little smaller. And a third column, which is booster. Because I'm feeling like it is both, it's statistically and clinically significant, given all the guidance that's coming from the CDC. Would you concur with that? And is there anything we can or should be doing to encourage our 16 and 17-year-olds who are eligible to get the booster? That's as much for you as it is for the superintendent, because we do make the high school available for vaccine clinics from time to time. We did that for the flu vaccine not long ago.
Yeah, and I know today the town had booster clinics for the adults in the middle of the day. So, I mean, we're definitely I'm seeing kids that are coming in with their, booster or their third shot because they're coming in complaining about sore arms and not feeling well. So I don't have a number for how many kids have had their booster, but, surprisingly, it's more than I thought, but I don't have data on that yet. But, I mean, I think it's I think that the Omicron is pretty transmissible, and they're saying that the booster is pretty effective. But these kids are young, so I do think that, if parents are waiting, I mean, it's a great idea, but I do think it's a parental decision too, So
I asked just because I feel like the value of getting your second shot is going to diminish over time. If I did get a booster when I was eligible, but if 6 or 7 months from now I was beating my chest because I got my second shot, it's not as helpful to me and those around me as it was in the weeks right after I got my second shot.
Right.
And it may not be it may be a question that's more fair for Jen Murphy, but so I didn't mean to put you on the spot. But given how it's becoming clear this is really evolving into an endemic and not just a pandemic, and it's going to be with us, in my mind, I'm beginning to struggle a little bit with what data is really important. What should we continue to keep our thumb on and measure, over time? And certainly, to me, the guidance right now suggests the importance of, certainly getting vaccinated if you're not.
Right, exactly.
No doubt about that. But even for those who have been vaccinated, the booster is just so important, especially with Omicron, which nobody was talking about 4 weeks ago.
Right, I know. It's pretty new.
Mr. Hopcroft.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. Thank you for all the hard work that you're doing. That's really wonderful. I have to say I'm really taken aback by how remarkably low the transmission has been in the schools and the numbers. I mean, it's really quite staggering.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a testament to all the work that's been happening for lots of people around the school. The masking, the testing, the layered approaches, throughout, and so I think that's really wonderful. It strikes me that we have some headwinds that we're against. The colder weather, people inside, the holidays, people connecting with different networks.
Right.
Omicron's going around more quickly than ever. High community transmission rates. You mentioned boosters. My 12-year-old, he got his shots as soon as he could, back in June. 6 months later now, a lot of people get boosters, but they're not eligible yet.
Mm-hmm.
So can't get them. The under fives, can't get them.
Right.
I also take note of the strong signal sent by the Board of Health, which beyond the policy decision, I feel like signals to the community that it's a time that you can kind of let down your guard if you want, personal choice, etc. I'm wondering, as we head off, to the holidays, what guidance and recommendations you might have for what level of vigilance people could have, things, I'm thinking masking, testing, etc. And then specifically, if there's an opportunity, I love these clinics, but I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to have a testing clinic right before we start school again, for when people come back from the holidays and things to get tested before they come back. But it strikes me, and I'll just editorialize, that now is the time to really put on the layers and put on the vigilance. And so I'm kind of answering my own question, but wanted to get your guidance for what can we do? Because people are going to travel, they're going to go see family, they're going to do this, and amidst all of these headwinds, what do you recommend so that we can, we're doing a great job in the schools, but we live in a context of a community, and what happens in that community is going to come into the schools. So.
Right. No, there's no question. I mean, I think from the beginning it's been educating people, just constantly, just reminding people that we don't. I mean, when we have it in the school, it's because it came from the outside in, right? So it's that vigilance, encouraging testing. Don't if you've traveled, and we prefer people to test before we come back, but we cannot require it. But certainly if you're symptomatic to get tested. But I think that it's just, we'll probably send out another newsletter before we leave for break and just kind of talk about those mitigation strategies. And, you know, we're all in it together, and it is a lot of personal responsibility because we don't know what people are doing outside of school. So we're just, it's educating, hoping people make the right choice. And that's honestly what it's been all along anyway. But certainly, you know, gatherings, we're going to see an uptick. Colder weather where they're, you know, we can't open our doors as much as we were. So, you know, we do anticipate that we're going to have a higher caseload, you know, for the winter, unfortunately. But
is there a possibility of doing, it may not be you that determines this, but of doing a testing? You know,
I'm sure that there, I mean, on Monday, next Monday, there's a testing clinic. And I'm pretty sure that, you know, the town has organized one. I just don't have the date. But right when we come back, we start our surveillance testing. Okay. You know, day one, we're at Morocco. We're doing teachers and staff. So, like, we're just going to hit the ground running the day we get back on the 3rd. We're just resuming all our testing.
That's across all the schools?
Yeah. But not everyone's on that Monday. Only because of our limited number tested, we do have to rotate. But we just hit the ground running on that Monday we get back.
What will be kind of good about that is we won't be testing and staying at that point. So that
we won't do test and stay,
first week, we could really dedicate the time to the surveillance testing.
Yep.
And then the next week, we'll be doing test and stay. But
right. I know we'll have a little lull, and then,
yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Bergstrom.
I note the high numbers, relatively high numbers of the test rate for the surveillance testing at the elementary school, and I imagine at the elementary school, those are the nurses that are taking the ownership of going around and swabbing the kids in the classes, or are they also parents bringing it back?
Oh, so in the elementary schools, we have the testing team, and they go around to the classrooms and test the children.
So, just a little feedback is that I wonder how we can involve the students more at the middle and high school about both picking up the tests and returning them, because I know I have 2 super vigilant high schoolers, and where the breakdown is struggling in getting those numbers up at the high school is both in the picking up and returning.
Right.
Given that they're high schoolers and they don't always remember. So I don't know if there's an opportunity for them as soon as they pick it up to walk outside, test, and bring it back in, or if there's just some strategies maybe working with the kids at the middle and high school where they can have some input in how to make that a higher return rate there.
Right.
Might be a good thing to think about as we go into the new year. Because I imagine that 5% is what we're returning. I'm wondering how many are signed up as well.
Right.
And what the delta between that is.
Right. I know we are keeping track of how many kits we give out, and then how many we give back.
Right.
I don't have the numbers. And even at the high school, we actually, for the past 2 weeks, the high school students have been coming in to see myself and Ms. Vicari to get their test kits.
Right.
So it's been time consuming, but I felt it was worth the time spent because Lauren and I were able to talk to the students and explain to them, here's your bag. Yep. Please make sure your name and birthday. I mean, we spend a couple minutes with each kiddo. I was thinking that would probably help. But certainly not every child is remembering every week to bring it back. Look, I'm hoping with the nasal swab take-home tests that kids are more apt to do it than the saliva. But at the time, that's all we had available for take-home.
At the middle school.
At the middle school. And it was just too hard couldn't think of any other way to do it at the middle school because homeroom is, 5-6 minutes. So we didn't have enough time to test in the school, so the take-home. But I'm hoping that kids will do the nasal swab. High school, we're going to keep plugging. I mean, we do have the kids make announcements in the morning. Sometimes I'll run out a piece of paper, have the kids announce it. Like I said, Ms. Konos has been amazing, constantly reminding everybody to send their test back.
So I know, like, at least for my kids, if they could do it there and just hand it back to you somehow, even if they were going outside, you'd probably get them back more often.
Right.
And I'm actually wondering what the delta is between that 5%. Is that 5% signed up at the high school, or is that 5% that you're getting back?
That we're getting, that's just that we're getting back, yeah.
Do you know what the percentage is?
I don't know.
Okay.
Stephanie Blass would know that because she is in charge of all the consents. I do not know that.
Okay.
But last year, when we had our clinics before school, it was definitely higher participation, but not that great. Remember, it was like 17%. So the problem with doing it in school is that you need the space. It has to be set up like a clinic, just like if you go to town hall. You have to give everyone, it has to be safe, right? So
Right.
that's a problem. If we give out the tests and the kids are all kind of swabbing in front of each other, I'm not quite sure that's
Right.
going to be
Yep.
safe, But involving more maybe the students with giving out the tests, I'm all for that. That'd be great. I mean, kids promoting it.
Well, we've just had the
Yeah.
students here a couple weeks in a row asking us to consider, because of the high vaccination rate at the high school, unmasking them. But it strikes me that we don't even know what our true positivity rate might be at the high school if we've only got a 5% testing rate.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see that get a little bit higher before we even start to have conversations about that.
Right. True. Yeah, I mean, the kids that we send home sick, pretty much are all testing, so.
Right.
But you're right, I know, it's, I don't know I'm not quite sure. We'd have to kind of set a goal and just try to see if we can even bump it up. It's very low right now.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, I do think potentially there's some incentive in what you just said. So if the school committee were at any point signaling that you're not even going to have a conversation about not masking or masking by choice, but you're not going to have that conversation until you have data,
Right.
That message might actually incentivize more participation in the surveillance testing. And with Mr. Mahoney, if we say that it's a competition.
And right now, they're falling a little bit
right
behind.
Right now, he's kind of behind.
Yep. Yep. 5 is much lower than 50.
We would probably see those numbers spike.
Yeah.
I think it is hard to get the word out to the middle schoolers and the high schoolers to remember to pick it up and to bring it back, as one who's dealing with that as well.
Yeah, the middle school, they get it handed out to them in their homeroom. The teachers get them from the office and hand them out.
It came home.
It comes home, I know. It's in the backpack. I know, I'm a mom, I know.
Our son
Or they
sat on
do
the
it and
counter.
then they don't drop it off.
I was going to say drop boxes at the door. I don't
We
know.
do, we have drop box. You should see
Yeah.
our pretty drop
Yeah.
box. It's
Maybe we
fabulous.
need a weekly raffle for,
Yeah.
if you,
I know.
if you enter, then you get a
I was going to
entry in
say
the
drop
Last year we
box
gave out
and a coffee
donuts.
comes out. I don't know,
I know.
high schoolers.
Maybe test points.
Yeah.
I have one more question.
Yes,
if I
Mr.
may.
Nixon.
I hope. Are you finding parents are understanding when kids are presenting with symptoms in the nurse's office? They go through the protocol and they need to be picked up. Are we getting static or pushback from parents? I think there was some in the early going, maybe not across the board. Are families generally supportive and understanding today?
I would say yes, I do. I really do. I think that the families are happy that we are open for business and that we are, their kids are in school every day, and we understand as nurses that it's disruptive, right? We get it. We're all moms and, parents, and the first thought in your mind is, oh no, I can't do this or I can't do that. But then, but I think for the most part, everybody understands that we're just doing this for the greater good, right? We want to keep, again, it's that whole education, just that empathy, listening, kind of meeting people where they're at, and then just explaining the rationale, and then, yeah, for the most part, people are
I want to say
understanding.
you've been doing an extraordinary job of that from the feedback I've been getting from parents who've had to have multiple calls with nursing staff to understand why their child's quarantined and another is not. So whatever you're doing on that end, I think people are extremely grateful the access they've had to the nursing staff, and the patience and response is what I've been hearing has been just really, really helpful to people.
That's great. I'll definitely give that back to the team because, this is a majority, this is most of our days, right,
Yeah.
on COVID. So answering the phone or triaging or, testing. So, we all know we're doing it for the right reasons for our kids and our families, but I'm sure that would, make them happy to hear.
Yeah, the patience
They're
and
really positive
understanding.
feedback. Yeah.
It's been appreciated.
Good. That's great. That's great.
Any other comments for Ms. Markham or questions? Mr. Hopcroft?
I'll just say that, again, thank you, and keeping our kids and families healthy is obviously our number one goal, but keeping them in school and learning is right up there as number two, and so hearing about all the colleges and universities that have shut down. I think Winchester High School is shut down. You know, we're at looks like the highest peak of transmission. So, you know, I applaud the education that you're doing. I hope as parents travel and with their families, you know, that they do as many layers as they can, as much testing as they can before they come back, because that's the way this works, and you guys are showing how to do it. So, thank you again, and keep our fingers crossed as we come back.
But I will definitely find out when the next clinic is passed, you know, next week when it is coming up, and we can send that out as a message when we break. So that's great.
Thank you for all you do.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. So thanks for your support, really.
Thank you so much.
Okay, have a nice night.
Thank you.
You too.
Probably talk to you tomorrow, Jen. Probably talk to you tomorrow. Get a text message. Thanks.
Okay. So next we will move to our second item, which is an update from our interim finance director, Mr. Peter Rowe, and Dr. Hackett regarding the FY23 budget update.
So I'll just get the ball rolling on it. The Finance Subcommittee did meet. As you know, this is what we did share with them. I'll let Peter can walk through it, but just so you know what you're looking at. This is what we're calling our rollover budget. So what this includes is the known increases with existing staff. So if we just took everybody we have right now, didn't add any programs, didn't change any programs, didn't have anybody, any staff turnover, and we just brought them into next year and everything into next year, this is the increases that you're seeing in the column to the right are what that looks like. And again, it's no assumptions about it. The only assumptions that we've made in here are some of the special education tuition and contracted services, which Peter will touch on. And we've also included a little bit of a bump in instructional supplies because they have not gone up, as we've been told by our principals, for I don't think anyone can remember the last time that they did
5 or 6 years, I think we're talking, yeah.
So, so the numbers are the actual increases to the lines, and then you can see at the bottom, you know, the total increase, which is an increase over the current appropriation of $58 million. So, as it stands right now, in a very rough draft form, this would represent a 3.67% increase. And I would just also say that what we will be doing next with the Finance Subcommittee, we're actually going to meet during the December break week. We will present to them all of the requests that have come to us as part of our budget process. So they will have a chance to hear that. We will come back next time to you, also give you that information, and if hopefully we will be in a place where we will be able to, we'll give you all that information, and then at a following meeting, we are going to be going back to the administrators and having a pre-K through 12 conversation with everyone at the table about what the priorities are. So that will be basically the second meeting, and then obviously we're going to continue to hone in on some of these numbers. So with that, Mr. Rowe.
Sure, I'm glad to jump in. I just want to remind everybody that when we talked about our spending for this year and the reporting that we did about a month ago, we indicated that we were within our salary budget in terms of our spending, probably in a couple of $100,000, probably underspending that budget. Where our real problem was on the expense side, and really targeted in our special education tuitions and other professional service costs that we were experiencing in special education. So if you think of this as spending issues, expense issues that we're projecting, not programmatically in terms of any change, but really just sort of taking what our spending patterns are today and understanding either contractually or just from what looks like, it's primarily really contractually, but and I'll go through these. If you think about the second one, I'll skip COLA for a second and just talk about steps. As you know, Both the teacher schedule and some of our other schedules are based on folks moving up in steps annually, separate from a collective bargaining cost of living change. So for the current body of staff, teaching staff, everyone moving up next year on the grid would be about a $699,000 cost. Traditionally, that gets offset some by turnover. So that's if you assume everyone's coming back. That doesn't ever happen. There's always some change. The question really becomes, what's the intensity of that turnover? In a high retirement year, you tend to lose more senior folks who may be replaced by more junior folks at a lower salary. We're not clear yet on what our pattern's going to be for this year, although the number of announced or declared retirements is pretty low. So we need some time to really fine-tune that number. Additionally, also in addition to teacher, there are other costs for other types of employees. And so there's a provision here for about $50,000. Jumping back up to the top number, a straight cost of living adjustment of 1% for all employees costs us just over $500,000. So the context is we're currently spending just about $50 million of our current operating budget is salaries. So 1% is $500,000. So put that in the context of collective bargaining going forward. I think you can understand the impact that could have on next year's budget. Lane advancement is another item that we don't yet have full data on, but we know from experience that we've generally budgeted that at a minimum of about $157,000. We know the group of employees who declare that they are intending to get their advancement in degrees. Some will achieve it, some won't, and so that'll impact exactly what that number should be budgeted at, but it'll probably be within this range. So to see that the salary subtotal at minimum is probably going to be somewhere in the $1.4 million range we're suggesting here, with obviously COLA impacting that significantly if we were to come in higher. The other cost that we know we're going to have to face, our transportation contract goes up by $30 per bus per day for next year, 180-day school year for 10 buses. That's in the $123,000 range. There may be some other costs related to athletics or some other activities that could be offset by looking at fee for service, which we do charge. We haven't introduced that conversation yet, but there is a revolving fund where parents pay. So exactly how that'll finally come out remains to be seen, but the cost itself will be rising next year for level service. The provision for legal costs is in here because there will be collective bargaining costs as we move forward over both the rest of this year and early next year. Presumably, that may take extra time, so we need to look at that and understand whether we'll be facing any additional costs. And then the two items that we really talked about when we talked about this year in terms of expenses over budget, both special ed tuition and personal services costs within special education. Those are two very large numbers. These are general estimates right now. I wouldn't say we could stake out either of these numbers, but we probably will have to provide some increase in the neighborhood of these as we finalize a budget for next year. And the other programmatic, if you will, the only programmatic change would be, as the superintendent said, we looked at, in conversation with the principals, we said, what if you had 3% more for next year? Where would you put it in your budget? So we've gotten feedback on how they'd use that. So we wanted to have that in our context. So between those two numbers, we're looking at growth of a little over $2 million. That's 3.6% of our current budget, which is a significant number. And in the context of the information we got from the Finance Committee when they talked about the revenue growth of the town is looking at its permanent changes in tax base and state revenue, those kinds of things. It's a large share of that number as they're projecting for next year. So we have our work cut out for us.
I would just want to loop back on the COLA, so I want to be really clear for the public and for anyone who's watching, that the only reason why we plug that 1% in is to give you an idea of what the impact is of 1%. I mean, this is not a negotiation strategy. It is simply to be able to say that every time we go up 1% in salaries, it's going to be about $500,000, so that then you can bring that down to that bottom line just to see the overall impact of that. The other piece of this is that with the sped tuition, what we will continue to be doing is to hone in on what do we think the structural impact will be, so the longer term impact of our out-of-district placements that are going to stay with us. And we want to make sure that we don't try to deal with that all in one fiscal year if we have to build it into the general fund. So right now, very much a placeholder, but would not necessarily be the full amount that we would be anticipating that would be a structural change to the general fund over a 2 or 3 year period. And I say that up or down. So we'll continue to work on that number. But I also want to just say that, for next year, we do have the flexibility of using some ESSER funding as well if we don't have to use it all this year. So we'll continue to update you on that. Happy to answer any questions if you have any, or suggestions.
I have one.
Mr. Nixon.
So for Peter, does legal currently sit on line 118, professional services, under the superintendency in the Munis reports?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
In other words, there's a reason why so it's not expressly called out. Years ago, I think it was, and then we made a strategy to no longer do it that way.
Yep.
So professional services, as I understand it, sort of an umbrella for several things, can include legal.
I believe it does, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So my only suggestion would be, it would be helpful to go back and look at some fiscal years where we were knee-deep in bargaining, but other legal a variety of things come up for which we sometimes engage attorneys, for which we have a bill. And it might be worthwhile for there to be some conversation, perhaps an executive session with this committee, about some thoughts around strategy, about to what degree we engage counsel, and for what, and maybe be a little more, let's say, use some discretion about when and to what effect we do that, knowing that every dollar we spend on legal is a dollar we're not spending, on students. But I appreciate sort of flagging there's a lot of work ahead. We have been able to negotiate settlements with multiple units in each 3-year period with no attorney in the room at the table. And I'd like to think we can keep doing that somehow. But it's good to flag it.
And just to add another piece of information to that line, we should also make sure that you understand that this is all legal. So special education legal cases that we've had to engage with attorneys on special education issues of placement. There have been times we've actually this year been engaging with legal on public records requests and what should and should not be included. And I will tell you that in my 6 months here, we have probably processed close to 20 public records requests. So that is a kind of a little bit of a new phenomenon that, in some cases, in my opinion, that process has kind of been weaponized a little bit. But it's certainly part of our business that we have to do now. So just want to make that point that this is all legal. It's not just collective bargaining.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions? Mr. Hopcroft.
Yeah, I have a probably not very well formed observation. Just the sped tuition being a large number, and these are all deltas, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it goes without saying that $500,000 might bring a lot of services in-house, and so just I know we're evaluating that all the time. Yep. What can we deliver in the district versus sending out of the district?
And that's definitely part of the conversation. It was a very well-formed question. Thank you, Mr. Hopcroft. The challenge right now is that for these students, they're already gone. And so it becomes a question of what are there programs that we can add or beef up that would potentially bring students back.
Right.
But it's an excellent point.
And I would imagine that Ms. Gerard is also looking at the students coming up, and when we get to her special education requests and funding, we may see.
We make her do it publicly at the central office meetings on Wednesday. So yes, without names, but yes.
But
I mean,
I guess I'm saying when we come to the next finance subcommittee meeting and we talk about departmental requests, I would hope that would be a question that would come up.
it might not be the next one, be the one after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just clarify that I'm fully supporting that we need to support these kids wherever it is that we need to support them.
Right.
It's just cannot be shifted. Is that capacity we can build internally?
Yep.
Right.
And we like to keep our kids.
Right.
And we like to keep our kids.
Regardless of the dollar figure.
But if we can't really meet their services,
Then we need to.
may send them,
Correct.
And I would say,
Totally with you.
And this is a general comment, we have students who have, who we have been placed in out-of-district placements who I believe we can service. And I just think it has been a tough couple of years. To a certain extent, as a school department, we have to regain confidence of parents who have students with special needs. I mean that as a system, not as a teaching staff or our special service providers. I mean, as a school system, and we are not alone.
And I hear that, and from the things I've seen, I think that the work that you're doing around communicating a lot of the good work that's been happening within the district is going to really go a long way towards helping build that confidence in the parents, because there's definitely a disconnect between what we see on the inside and what the teachers and administrators are doing, and sometimes what you read on Facebook. So.
Yep.
Just one
Mr.
other
Brady.
comment, Peter, I appreciate you bringing up the fact of our 3.67 versus the town's revenue increases that we heard about at the budget summit. So I just hope that we'll continue to kind of align those two pieces and demonstrate that, that the town obviously does have increases in revenue, and our increase in the budget may be somewhat in line with those, and I think that's just something that is worth keeping in mind. People may see our numbers and it may give them pause, but I want them also to be aware of the revenue increases that the town sees, and there is some alignment there, and I appreciate your rough target so far has lined up very well with that. I think that's helpful.
Can I just build on it, Peter? If you happen to know off the top of your head or ballpark it, since I wasn't, I didn't see this presentation. If we're looking at a $2 million increase here, is there a sense of how much the town's revenue increase projections are? Are they? I don't even have a sense of the scale.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the number was in the 3.5 range.
It's very close to our number.
Yeah, it's very close.
Yeah.
3.5 million?
3.5.
No, percent. So the town revenue went up 3.5%.
Do you know what the dollar figure is, or just as a ballpark? What 3.5?
Not off the top of my head.
No.
So it seems maybe apples and oranges.
Well, I thought it was in the 3.5 million range. So
We'll have to. I have the information. I just don't have it in front of me.
Yeah.
If it's 3.5 million, it's less than 3.45%.
right.
I thought it was a percent, which is very similar to what we're looking at potentially.
I apologize for looking at it before the meeting.
It sounds like the
No,
floor
that's okay.
is 3.5 million, and it might be higher, so that gives me a sense of.
Yeah.
Well, and I'd also like to remind everyone that this is without adding any new programs or initiatives, too.
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at here.
And on that note, I wanted to point out, I understand we had a disconnect with DPW for custodial support in this building for this school year.
Correct.
Yep.
So that should be flagged
It has
to be
been,
sure
believe me.
that's getting picked
Yep.
up for FY23.
Yep.
Yes, it has been flagged and flagged again by.
And is there understanding with Mr. Lawson and Mr. Gill about that?
They are the one who are
Yeah.
flagging it. So,
Okay.
in terms of funding and all, that hasn't been part of the conversation, but because it is a town expense, so it will. But obviously, it's school related. But they are on it.
Okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Rowe or Dr. Hackett? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe. Appreciate it. Next, we will move into our single action item, which is consideration of approval to dispose of surplus technology and hardware. We have a really nice summarized report.
Too.
Who's presenting?
And Dr. Hackett, will you be?
Dr. Elenema would be able to answer
Dr.
surplus
Elenema?
technology questions than myself.
Yes.
Yep. Are there questions? Sorry, did I miss? Or you just want me to talk about it?
Well, I have a general question, which is where is it going when we say surplus? Typically, it means it just gets junked and recycled. But I couldn't help but think about is it the CTE up at the high school in the middle of the building? Do we have some students who might be interested in taking some of this stuff apart?
Yeah,
Generally
we
speaking,
do. We do. A lot of the stuff does go there, and they repair, and our middle school students do as well, or they use the parts. But these are things that are just ready to be recycled.
They're toast, huh?
Yep. And space is limited here now that we have so many new friends. So we try to keep moving on our surplus.
So then
Our
my
storage
follow-up.
space has gone away, you're saying?
Yes. 3 and 4-year-olds in storage don't go well together.
They really don't.
Broken technology.
My follow-up, given I'm sure there's a considerable amount of lithium-ion batteries and other things that are in these products, what is I think of this differently as like old wooden furniture that's sort of tired.
Mm-hmm.
What is our disposal method, and how are we ensuring this stuff is being disposed of appropriately?
Mm-hmm. We have a recycling company that's on the state approved list, both for the environmental pieces and for any possible security blah 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 issues. And they come and pick up our surplus.
And is there a cost to us to get rid of this?
No, usually it's just mutually beneficial. Lori and I had a good time on a very hot day, spending a day in August getting rid of our our surplus that you last approved. So they come with a big truck out here and take it away.
So I'll be happy to make a motion.
Mr. Hopcroft.
Mr. Hopcroft.
Just build on one thing. I appreciated the notion of trying to recycle it within our schools first. If our kids had mechanical inclinations, I thought I would just offer that I've seen some very interesting artwork created out of surplus circuit boards and keyboards and things like that. So just not necessarily, I support recycling this for now, but just as we think about it in the future, there may be some creative art students as well as
that's
the
a great
mechanical
idea.
students.
I'll mention it to Jen Levatino. They're always doing innovative things
Yes,
in our
yes.
department. So yeah.
You're going to make a motion, Mr. Nixon?
I'm happy to move that the school committee authorize disposal of technology surplus items to ME Tech Recycling, Chromebooks, desktops, monitors, laptops, chargers, keyboards, printers, iPads, and document cameras as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to the chair report. And this is our last meeting of the 2021 school year, of the 2021 year. And it's hard to believe that the whole year has nearly gone by. And we started in a very different space, but it also doesn't seem so different or so far away now. And I'd like to just acknowledge the many challenges and or losses that many of us have faced over this year. And yet our schools and teachers have been, for many of us, our center to which we hold. And I think I speak for all our school committee members that we thank our administration, our staff, our educators, nurses, our students, our community, from our hearts for your dedication, your perseverance, your flexibility throughout 2021. And as the Japanese say at this time of the year, because I like to refer to the Japanese sometimes, and the end of the year and the beginning of the year are very heartfelt times there. A yoi otoshi o mukai yo ni, which translates roughly to please look forward to a very fine year. And I would say to all our community members to please have a very good winter break and to please be safe. And now for our superintendent's report.
I am not going to follow
All
that.
of that.
I will yield my time to you if you'd like to say more. So.
No.
I hear you're Japanese.
No, you don't.
So, next we have our future agenda items, which include, I can't see, but I assume they are listed up there.
FY23 budget update, the building and facility update, and the enrollment update.
Do we have any others? Mr. Brady?
Just wanted to continue to remind us that I am proposing we have a discussion of preschool and potentially offering an expanded preschool day next year, and at least investigating that possibility.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Hopcroft?
And it may be going out without saying, but I'd love to have Ms. Markham, back, and I think that probably even at our next meeting, it might be interesting to see where all the COVID data is.
Yeah.
Okay. Duly noted. Thank you.
You want me to read this?
Mr. Rowe?
Yeah, I'd like to take a moment to answer accurately the question that I was asked previously about the information we got from the town and the finance committee. And their revenue projection, this is obviously preliminary, but was growth of 4.36 million from current year 22 to fiscal 23, which would be growth of about 3.2%. So they're still obviously working on that. We don't know what the final number is, but that's the context in which we received their information. So,
thank you.
That was driving me nuts, so thank you.
Yeah.
Busily searching. Okay, so next meetings.
Sorry, one other item.
Yes, Mr. Nixon.
Related to future agenda items, we typically in January receive and approve schedule of courses for the middle school and the high school. We did not do it last year, at least for McCall. I don't know that we did it for the high school, for obvious reasons. There were some distractions. But every other year, we get an update on schedule of courses to be offered, and that really dovetails, and we do it in January, and it dovetails nicely into the budget discussion. And really only in the past, again, last year being an exception. I feel like starting maybe 3 years ago, we were beginning to get into the habit to talk about some of our curricular goals, and then to ask, what here is really important, and is something budget limited? Is something really, really important here that maybe isn't coming up in your leadership team discussions, maybe hasn't come up in the finance subcommittee discussions, and should be a priority for the school committee? In a couple of instances that I can recall, before we made this subtle schedule change, so saying this for everybody's benefit, we had voted a budget in January, and then literally 3 weeks later, we're getting a presentation on schedule of courses, and we were hearing, well, we'd like to be able to offer this, but we can't because we don't have the budget. Right. And we all were giving ourselves a dope slap. So that's important to pick that up if we can in January.
So I would have a question about that, Dr. Hackett. I think that would that come up through curriculum subcommittee first and then to this
It typically
committee?
does not.
Well, we haven't typically had a curriculum subcommittee for the last several years, which is why it's come directly to us here.
And you're asking someone who has not typically been here more than 6 months. So
yeah.
I was going to say that. I
Go
thought
through the curriculum subcommittee in the years immediately following the creation of the curriculum subcommittee.
But I believe in our policy manual, there is a description of the curriculum subcommittee, and that one of the duties that could be on the curriculum subcommittee's plate is to review the course of study handbook before it comes to school committee.
in a prior life, that was the process, because it gave the subcommittee an opportunity to go in depth with questions to the administration, and then all of the information came forward to the school committee. It wasn't a vetting process of what's going to come forward. It was just an opportunity for, and also for the administrators to hear the questions, and because sometimes questions get asked that we don't think about, even at that level. So I serve at the pleasure of the committee, so whatever you just would like to do, but it's not uncommon practice.
So regardless of how it gets to the table, I just want to point out we missed it last year, and we should get back on that horse.
Surprisingly.
And it is in our curriculum subcommittee.
And Mr. Mahoney is ready to go. So we've got to have conversations with him and administratively talk about what we think about his current recommendations, because they're still in draft form. So there isn't any reason, I don't think, and Dr. Alanama can speak to it better than I can, that we can't bring in January the proposals around schedule of courses.
There may or may not be a question about journalism.
It's being anticipated. I've already heard it.
Yeah.
They
And
have
I
their
know what
sock
question I'm going to
answer.
get.
Your reputation precedes you. So, okay.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is next meetings. Please hold on to your hats, but does any week go by in January without a school committee meeting? It is a very heavily budget-focused month, and we have meetings on January 11th, January 18th, January 25th, and January 31st, all beginning at 6 p.m. Our January 25th meeting will be a public hearing for public input on the proposed budget from Dr. Hackett and Mr. Rowe. And January 31st will include a vote on the budget.
Dr. Hackett and I have a question about
Yes.
January 31st. Seeing as how that is a single line item and we are voting the budget, that coincides with an important EFPBC meeting at which there's also a vote for the MSBA. We were wondering if, because it's a single item, is there availability to maybe meet at 5 o'clock like we did tonight on a single agenda item like we did tonight, which would then presumably allow the EFPBC, I mean, we would be well informed going into that meeting. I wouldn't expect a whole lot of debate, but if the committee were able to consider that, not that we need to make this decision right this second, it would allow the EFPBC to get through an awful lot of stuff to be ready for the MSBA. If not, we would just have to postpone a little bit that EFPBC meeting. I've got that right, don't I?
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. January 31st is a Monday.
Monday, yes. And I'm sorry, that's the conflict,
Yeah,
because
right.
EFPBC meets on Monday. Yeah.
Was that meeting scheduled, I noticed all the other meetings were on Tuesdays, that one was on Monday, was that in order for us to meet before the EFPBC?
No.
No,
Yeah,
it was,
there was some
it was to
intention.
allow presentation and discussion on the budget, and we typically vote the budget by the end of January.
Oh, okay, so to get it.
I was gonna say it was to get it in by the end of January. To get it in by the end of January, to get,
Yes.
so the town manager could have.
And with the understanding it would not be a lengthy meeting.
I have flexibility.
I would say I'm fine with it if we do a virtual meeting. It is quite onerous to get to a meeting at 5 o'clock.
Could be snowy.
It's a lot. So
Yeah.
Yep.
if it's not, there's not gonna be a lot of discussion, I would say let's do it virtually and then.
I like Mr. Brady's suggestion because the EFPBC meetings are virtual.
Oh, yes.
Right.
I will just say.
I also like it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we are the only board that is meeting in person, and not that I have anything wrong with meeting in person. I think it has a lot of value a lot of the time, but I think we should always remember we do have the flexibility, so we should use it when it is worth doing.
Yep.
I think particularly because by the 31st, we will have heard everything we need to hear. We will have had opportunities to ask the questions. Of any meeting we would have, that one I think is the poster child to go remote.
Mr. Hopcroft.
And I might just add to that, one, we're the only ones that meet in person because we're doing the best, I think, in the school district to keep COVID numbers down and things, so kudos to the district. But also, we might consider the January 11th meeting, just given that there'll probably be a lot of COVID floating around, as everyone comes back for another virtual meeting.
I would only just say to you that I think it is important that you're meeting in person because we're asking our children and our teachers to show
teachers
up
to be in
5 days a
person.
week.
Yes.
And I
Yep.
think it is a good modeling.
Right.
We clearly have the flexibility to go remote, and that we should take advantage of that when we need to. But I know I have heard that it is appreciated that the committee meets in public and that they meet in person. But obviously
Sure.
meet in public, but.
So I like Mr. Brady's suggestion. I would be available to go remote at 5 o'clock on the 31st, and members of the
Sounds like we all
EFPBC would
have-
appreciate that, as well as the design team.
As well as the
Yes.
superintendent, who will be on 128, arrive at home just before 5 o'clock.
On those
and
two
join you.
wheels.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. All right, so January 31st, 5 p.m. virtual. 5 p.m. virtual. And with that, I would accept a motion for school committee to move into executive session for the following purposes. Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Winchester Education Association, and Purpose 2, a grievance from the Winchester Education Association Unit A, because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. and also a purpose to discuss strategy with respect to non-union administrative contracts, since to do so in open session would be detrimental to negotiations.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Aye.
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 Okay. That was like slow motion. And the committee will reconvene in open session only for the purposes of adjournment.